Exegesis in Genesis, Lecture 9, Part 2 here. Thanks for continuing with us. Now you guys at home that are watching this, do not have your feet up on the desk. And don't chew too loudly, because we can hear you. I think if there's someone that's kind of schizophrenic. Verse 9, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Amen. This section called the generations of Noah is probably written by Noah himself, says Dr. Morris. It is noted that Noah was perfect in his generations. Among all his contemporaries, over the many generations of a long life, he was the only one, so far as the record goes, who had walked with God since Enoch. That's as far as the record goes. So Enoch walked with God, now Noah is said to have walked with God. 4 times it is said that Noah did all that God commanded him. Amen. It's also said he was a preacher of righteousness. Though apparently no one responded to his preaching. Oh boy. So far as we know, he preached hundreds of years with no converts except those few in his own family. I'd like to have a church ministry like that. Praise the Lord, you got the family. Sometimes those are the hardest ones. Now we're introduced Shem, Ham, and Japheth as Noah's 3 sons. My 3 sons. Or at least as the 3 of his sons who survived the flood. There has been much discussion about the meaning of these names, and it must be recognized that these are somewhat uncertain, he says. Those who believe... Where did I write this? No, I didn't. Those who believe that Noah's 3 sons were progenitors of 3 main people groups have interpreted the names to mean, well, Ham is black, Shem dark, and Japheth fair. However, Shem is the usual Hebrew word for name or renown, and Japheth is believed by most scholars to mean enlarged. There's a possibility that it means fair, but in the sense of beautiful rather than light skin. Well, I think I'm a Japhethite. Kidding, yeah. I think I am, though, but not for that reason. As far as Ham is concerned, it may be related to the Hebrew kam, meaning warm or hot. Okay, so there's controversy on that. I've been taught that Ham was the darker skinned people, Shem or the olive, middle tones, and Japheth, the Gentile, mostly Gentile European, Caucasoid style. Someone read verse 11, and I'll read 12 and 13.
The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence.
And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Dr. Morris says, it is interesting to take passing note that Genesis 6:12 says, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. Marks the middle verse of Genesis 1:1 through 11:32. Of course, chapter 11 I wrote being the last chapter in this section before moving on to the patriarchs. So it's the middle verse of this section. What does that mean? Well, it just means it's the middle verse, but it's interesting that it says that. The term all flesh on occasion includes animals as well as men. And some writers have assumed this verse to suggest that animals had become corrupt also, suggesting that illicit unions among the animals might have produced some of the grotesque monsters, dinosaurs. Come on, where is he? Watch some more horror flicks, buddy. Okay. Our folks here voted they didn't like that. This tells. Like it or not, he says, the Bible does not teach that the flood was a world-destroying cataclysm. Oh, sorry. The Bible does teach that the flood was a world-destroying cataclysm. As Peter says, the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished, the whole thing. The earth would technically not refer to the whole planet, I wrote, but just the dry land, because otherwise the whole thing would have been gone. It would have been a ball of water around it in the atmosphere and everything. So it's talking about the dry land. But all dry land was covered with water, even the highest mountain peaks. And we'll look at that kind of a little, well, next week maybe. Actually, it's not going to be next week. Yeah. Bible college is not this weekend. Master's college is on Thursday. Okay. We got that figured out. Oh, good. So I'll read 14, someone read 15. God says, make thee an ark of gopher wood. Room shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch.
And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits.
A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. So it describes it reasonable there. You can kind of picture it. Now I had the window thing figured out wrong all these years, I would suppose, by what he says. The word for ark, tahach, is not the word used later for the Ark of the Covenant, but it is the word used for the Ark of Bulrushes in which Moses was hidden as a baby. It seems, therefore, to be a very ancient word for a box meant to float upon water. At the time Noah began building his ark, it must have seemed ludicrous to his antediluvian contemporaries. They had never seen any kind of flood or even rain, and Noah's preaching and construction work no doubt gave them much occasion. Ah, old guy, old preacher, he's building that. They knew what boats were, though, right? Because they had water and sea. So look, there's a huge boat out in the middle of the desert. What, is there just going to be, is water going to come on through there? According to God's instructions, the ark was to be designed for capacity and floating stability rather than for speed or navigability. The size of the ark was about 450 by 75 by 50. You need to know that. What? Oh, I thought someone was saying.
I'm agreeing with
Oh, okay. All right. It can be shown hydrodynamically that a gigantic box of such dimensions would be exceedingly stable, almost impossible to capsize. Even in a sea of gigantic waves, the ark could be tilted through any angle up to just short of 90 degrees and would immediately thereafter right itself again. Piece of pepperoni stuck in the back of my throat, am I right? Furthermore, it would tend to align itself parallel with the direction of major wave advance and thus be subject to minimum pitching most of the time. Now that is beyond my understanding why it would do that, but that's what he says. He's a scientist, you know. With the dimensions as calculated, the total volumetric capacity of the ark was approximately 1.4 million cubic feet, which is equal to the volumetric capacity of 522 standard livestock rail cars. Right? This is cubic, so it's dealing with height also. It's sticking them all in, using every space. Since it is known that about 240 sheep can be transported in one stock car, it's known that? As they stuffed 240 of them in there? Up to
Wow.
I don't know how they did it. Well, is it known? A total of over, well, calculating this out, over 125,000 sheep could have been carried in the ark. Now that's if they used every space, not just the floor, but all the way up to the ceilings and those floors where they were supposed to have them. But it's okay. There's plenty of room for error on this. A few other details of the ark's construction are given. It was to have 3 stories, each about 15 feet high. And each of these decks was to be divided into various rooms. The ark was to be made of gopher wood, the exact nature of which is unknown today, though apparently some type of dense, hard wood. And it was to be made waterproof and resistant to decay by impregnation with pitch, inside and outside. Although the phraseology is difficult, most authorities understand that this window was to consist of a 1 cubit opening extending all around the ark's circumference near the roof as provision for light and ventilation. Presumably there was also a parapet provided to keep out the rain. So I always thought it was just a little window about this big, and that's what he had. But I also picture wrongly that he could look out and see everything. So that's what I pictured it, but more than likely it's 1 cubit, so about 18 inches, all the way around the top, with something that goes way over it to protect. So you can't just, like the bird doesn't just fly out that way, and have to fly down and then out. That's my understanding of it is. Going on. Finally, the ark was to have a door in its side. There was only to be one door. And all must enter and leave by the same door. This surely is typology for the one-way door via Jesus Christ to heaven, to be saved from God's judgment, hell. Once the door was shut, and later we'll see by God, it was done. None others could be saved. It was too late for them. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't open the door, apparently. I'm thinking about it. Did God open the door for them also? When the ark rested? Or did they open the door? I believe God opened the door. I can't remember now. It would make sense if only He could close it, and only He could probably open it. As they go searching. Someone read verse 18.
But with thee will I establish my covenant.
Uh-oh.
You said
I messed
18,
up.
I think it was
17. 17.
And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die.
He says this many times, or forms of it. He's going to kill everything that is living, has the breath of life. For the first time, God here tells Noah exactly what form the coming destruction would take, though it may have already been implied from his instructions concerning the ark. Building a big boat, okay? Every water's coming. The word for flood, mabul, used here for the first time, applies only to the Noahic flood. Other floods are denoted by various other words. So this flood is a different word, meaning a great flood. This word mabul is related to an Assyrian word meaning destruction. Similarly, when the Genesis flood is referred to in the New Testament, the Greek term cataclysmos is uniquely employed, instead of the usual Greek word for flood. This flood was not to be comparable to other later local floods. It was to be absolutely unique in all history because it was a universal flood, not a local one. In the next lecture, we will deal with that. The flood would not only destroy mankind, but also all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven. The flood would not destroy, though, the marine species. The multitudes of marine organisms would no doubt perish in the submarine upheavals associated with the flood. Okay, seems right. Someone read verse 18.
But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy son's wife with thee.
Amen. First mention of the word covenant, berith, in the Bible. God promises Noah that in response to his obedience, he will subsequently establish his covenant with him and his seed, and those who accompanied him into the ark. A covenant. The details of this covenant were elaborated later when they had all emerged from the ark. Initially, however, it was essential that Noah build and furnish the ark so that life could be preserved through the coming flood. Specifically, God said that only 8 people would be on board: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. God foreknew that none from that generation would be converted through Noah's preaching, and so all would perish in the waters of the flood. He already knew that, so he told them, just you. So with Noah, he had a covenant established. Now, let's go on. 19 I'll read, so we're going to go 20. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female.
Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive.
And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. They have like bags of gravy train. What's your feed?
Purina, elephant chow.
Elephant chow. Purina would
giraffe
send a big truck full
chow, Purina chow.
They ate the same stuff. In these verses are contained the instructions for the preservation of the animals in the ark. A male and a female of each kind were to be brought into the ark, and they were to keep them alive. In addition to this general rule, 7 animals of each clean kind, evidently those intended for use as domestic and sacrificial animals, were to be taken on board. Authorities on biological taxonomy estimate that there are less than 18,000 species of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians living in the world today. So 2 of each kind would be 36,000, okay? This number might be doubled to allow for known extinct land animals. Allowing then for 2 of each species, and then doubling what we know today, there might have been a total of about 72,000 animals on the ark, and to allow for the 5 extra animals in each clean species, we're going to make it 75,000. Yes?
I think it might be even 14 of each because it says the male and the female. But male with his female in the next chapter.
Okay.
It says by 7 is the male and his female.
5 extra animals in each. Okay, yeah. So my guess on 75 might not be right. I added that. So it might be 85, whatever you come up with. But it probably needs to be not beyond 125,000. If you're using every spare space, except for a little room for these guys to be in, and then you got to have room for food too. So, but they didn't have to be big animals. In fact, sheep are bigger than, I think the average animal is smaller than a sheep in general. And dinosaurs, you can have just a baby dinosaur. Yeah. Let's go on. Since, as we have already seen, the ark could have carried as many as 125,000 sheep, and since the average size of land animals is surely less than that of a sheep, there it is obvious that no more than 60% of its capacity would have to be used for animals. Actually, it would have been less than this, since the biblical kind is probably considerably broader than that of the arbitrary species category, because what God didn't have them bring on every type of dog there ever was. It was 1 dog. That was it. Male and female. Probably not a clean animal. And 1 cat. No, maybe there's a domestic cat and there's like a lion cat. 1 dog, 1 horse, 1 mule. Okay? Let's go on, and then, what?
No mules.
No mules.
That's true.
Horses and donkeys. We get to mules later on.
I wrote, though the 125,000 figure is based on cubic feet, not square foot, thus it is based upon stacking the animals on top of each other, which could have been done with little cages or stalls, because it goes up 15 feet high. So you can have like 4 levels, 5
All
levels,
around.
all around. You could have built that in there. It had like 100 years to build this thing. Plenty of time for a guy to build an aircraft carrier. The larger animals would simply need to have just been a baby of each gender on board. Thus, the specified size of the ark seems ideally appropriate for the animals it had to carry. There was, of course, also ample room for the approximately 1 million species of insects. Many of these, no doubt, could have survived outside the ark, as well as food for the animals, for living quarters for Noah and his family, and for any other necessary purposes like bathroom. Things like that. Okay, bathroom break, all y'all. Go to the bathroom. No, not where you're at. You know, I told you where. Line up, take a number. You are in the hundreds of thousands. Sorry. Next time, be prepared. I don't know how that would go. They probably didn't eat much and they went to hibernation mode. And then everything just shuts down. And God, I don't know if he says that here, but he created these to have that built into their DNA, to go into hibernation mode. And also for migration purposes. They migrated there. How did they get them all there? Going on. Neither was there any serious problem involved in assembling the animals. Oh, here it is. It will be recalled that the climate before the flood was probably uniformly warm all over the earth. Furthermore, the seas, hills, and other geographical features were also more or less uniformly distributed over the globe. Consequently, animals were not ecologically isolated in different latitudes or altitudes as at present, but were more or less uniformly distributed around the world. No great distances were involved then when the time came for represented. Oh yeah, okay, that's what you're saying. So you wouldn't have to go to the jungles of Africa to find certain kinds. They're all uniformly distributed, so in any sector you have all the different types of animals. Like say any 100-mile area, you're probably going to have them all. It's a thought at least. And when the time came for representatives of each kind to migrate to the ark, the Lord told Noah that the animals would come unto thee, verse 20, at the proper time, so that Noah did not have to go send out a hunting and trapping expeditions to get them. This was probably the first animal migration in history, as such migrations had never been necessary before. With pleasant climate and abundant food available everywhere, why would you have to migrate? Within each animal kind, however, had been placed genes, he says, which were programmed to impart such migratory instincts to their possessors. That's a way to explain it. I wrote, there were probably a special gene during the antediluvian age for this one purpose, and afterwards God removed the gene. Maybe. And in conclusion, wow, time too. Another remarkable physiological mechanism possessed by most animals as a protection against sharp temperature and other climatological changes is the ability to suspend all bodily changes in a state of hibernation. This ability enables an animal to pass the winter in very confined quarters with little or no food intake or bodily excretions. The phenomenon of estivation is a similar state of dormancy during very hot weather. Never heard of that one. Practically the same discussion could apply to the capacity of hibernation as to that of migration. So God just had that gene in there and then He removed it. These were both probably latent genetic abilities possessed by animal populations since creation, then divinely selected and activated by God at the time of the flood. As these animals arrived at the ark, partook of a good meal, and then entered the ark, in response to the suddenly darkened sky and the chill in the air, they settled down for a year-long sleep in their respective nests in the ark. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. Interesting. Let's take a break and chat about this for an hour.